Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Montreal Jazz Saxophonist, composer, and educator Samuel Blais. He talked about his history since 2012 with the Montreal Jazz Orchestra, and he also talked about his time at the Montreal Conservatory of Music, McGill University, and at the prestigious Manhattan School of Music in New York. Over the years, he has spent some quality times with world-renowned cats like Greg Osby, Dave Liebman, Jim Black, Donny McCaslin, Terri Lyne Carrington, and he's been all over the U.S., Canada, France, Belgium, Mexico, and even Hong Kong. This cat is always going places, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Samuel, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Let's go ahead and kind of start off here and talk to me a little bit about your work with the Montreal Jazz Orchestra. I think that's kind of the first and foremost to kind of get an idea of what you do with them and kind of how you feel about being a part of it.
Well, the whole project started back in 2012. It was a project that was that a bunch of people were thinking about getting together for a while. And as you know, Jacques Lorrain is the founding father, if I can say. And I had worked with him previously on a few records. He's also a sound engineer, and he was a musician for many, many years. He talked to me about the project, and we basically got together with 5 or 6 musicians that we really wanted to be a part of, and we kind of did like a survey. So everybody thought of 3 or 4 saxophone players that they would really want to have in the saxophone section, and then same thing for trombone and trumpets. We kind of found out that everybody had the same people in mind, and we approached everyone and started the project basically. And the whole idea is to have, there are a lot of big bands in Montreal, obviously, and a lot of really great bands, like I'm thinking of Joe Sullivan, I'm thinking of Vic Vogel's big band, Jean-Nicolas Trottier, Christine Jensen. They all had their bands, but everybody's got a career in trying to write music, and so we could never have a big band that would be around all year long. It would always be just for this one project or this one record. So the idea was kind of use the model of a classical orchestra, trying to get funding, trying to get organized so that we can present concerts all year long. So that's kind of how it started and what the idea behind it was. And we're really happy that we're into our 7th year of existence, basically.
Were you born and raised in Montreal?
Yes, it's a small town, maybe just like half an hour away from Montreal, but I've been around Montreal for a long time now. I lived in New York for 3 years. I did a master's at the Manhattan School of Music. So that's a 2-year program. I stayed an extra year, and then I came back to Montreal.
What music were you listening to growing up? What really got you into jazz?
I was listening to a lot of different stuff. I started studying classical music first. I already had a big interest in jazz, and I basically thought I would do classical training before switching to jazz. Thinking about it, it wasn't really switching to jazz because I was listening to it already, and then just by listening to music and studying music in general, I noticed that there were a lot of things that both styles had in common. When I was young, I listened to obviously Coltrane Parker, Michael Brecker, Josh Redman, Kenny Garrett, a lot of different players, a lot of different styles. Obviously, since I study classical music and I listen to a lot of different stuff, I'm open to a lot of different styles, even just in the jazz idiom.
What was one of the first live jazz shows you ever saw that really blew your doors down?
I remember going to the Jazz Festival, the Montreal Jazz Festival, when I was maybe 15 or 16, and I heard Mike Murley, who's a tenor player from Toronto. And then I remember seeing Chris Potter a few years later. The Montreal Jazz Festival is really cool for that because you'll see a lot of great players, and obviously indoor shows, but also outdoors where it's completely free, so you can see a lot of different groups and a lot of different players from all over the world.
You've had the chance in your education to really learn from some heavy people and play with some heavy people like Dave Liebman, Greg Osby, Donny McCaslin, Terri Lyne Carrington. Talk to me a little bit about what you've garnered from people that have so much experience in jazz and have so much to impart.
It's obviously been a great experience. I guess my first few times playing with heavyweights was when I was at McGill University, where we had some guests playing with the McGill Jazz Orchestra 1. One of those big events was when we had Phil Woods playing with the band, and we ended up doing some trading in one of the songs, and so that's a big highlight, obviously. And then I went to Banff, the Creative Jazz Workshop, which they have every year, which is a 3-week program. And that was the closest thing to being in New York before being in New York. I remember playing music with Vijay Iyer, with Dave Douglas, with Greg Osby. That's where I met him. There were a lot of really, really heavy cats. And then studying in New York, obviously, I got to hear all of the great players that live there and play there. And that sort of brought an idea to my mind. And since 2007, 2008, I've been doing invitation series. I brought to Montreal Greg Osby, Larry Grenadier, Nate Smith, Jim Black, Dave Liebman, obviously. And lately I've been playing a lot with Ben Munder and Dan Weiss. So being in New York kind of helped me to hear those players and then play with them, and then it was obviously pushing my playing way further just from playing their music and hearing them play their tunes and also playing on my tunes. So it's obviously been a very, very important influence for me.
What do you like best about being a professional musician?
I like the fact that I'm not stuck in traffic every day of the week. I like the fact that I can make a living doing what I love most, even though that is sometimes a double-edged sword. It's very rewarding to play a concert and get ready for a concert and practice and rehearse and present that music in front of an audience. And it's always, I find that it's something that's motivating because you can never kind of rest on something you've accomplished. I sometimes look at old posters and I kind of think, oh wow, yeah, it's true, I did that. But then it's almost as if it doesn't mean anything because there's always the next project and there's the next step in your career and in your playing. So you're kind of always evolving as a musician, but also as a human being. And I think that's what I like best about music, the fact that it pushes you to always get better and improve, basically.
So if you have a dream tonight, you run into your younger self, like say, 15, 20 years ago, and you could give your younger self advice, what would it be?
I don't know. That's a good question, actually. Maybe I would try to start my own project a little bit earlier. I didn't start super late, but I was in my maybe mid-20s. Let's say maybe push myself to start writing music and present it a little bit earlier. I've been writing music for a long time, but it took me a really long time to actually have the confidence to present it or to record it. So maybe that would be one of the things. If not, I'm trying to think, because I was a pretty big practicer too, so that wasn't really an issue. Like I wouldn't go back and tell myself, you need to practice more. You can always practice more, obviously. But I think that part of becoming a musician was fairly there early for me. Maybe it'd be more trust yourself, a little bit more confidence. I think that might be also a downfall of studying music, in the sense that when you're in a academic perspective of things, when you're studying, when you're in school, there's always a dynamic of exams and having to perform and being evaluated. And I know that's kind of an obligation for a school, because they have to find a way to evaluate you and in order to give you a diploma. But in a sense, sometimes I feel like it's taking away from the artistic perspective of things and putting pressure sometimes maybe on the wrong things, where the most important thing would be to find your voice as an artist and not to be able to remember these 85 tunes that you should know, etc. Obviously, it's great to know jazz standards and to know the history of the music, but sometimes it can be a little bit of a trap, like you're kind of stuck in a mindset where you're always evaluated as opposed to being in a mindset where you're always expressing yourself. You're always trying to be in the moment.
So why do you love jazz?
The freedom, the improvisation part, the communication in the band, the way just one note or one rhythm can shift the dynamic of a tune or of a solo. I've been realizing more and more that the term like taking a solo is so wrong in so many ways, in the sense that yes, we're featuring the saxophone, for example, per se in a certain tune, but you're still interacting with everybody. And I think I've been using more space in my solos than ever, just because I'm realizing that it's not all about what you do. It's about how you interact, how you react to the band, to the people playing with you. And that's something that I've really tried to apply to my own project, in the sense that I want to play with guys that I know I'm going to have fun with. Yes, of course, they have to be great players and good readers and this and that and motivating to play with, but most of all, we have to have fun. There has to be communication. And I think that's what I love most about jazz, the fact that you can play the same tune 100 times and it's always going to be different because it keeps evolving, because everybody plays it different, and just one little change from the piano player or like one little thing coming from the drums will push you in a different direction. So I think that's what I like the most about it.
So everyone has their perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, that you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are now?
Yeah, right, exactly.
I think I'm an ever-evolving human being trying to find more and more ways to express feelings and emotions and passions through music. I'm someone who likes to try to keep getting better and likes to try to get people more and more connected, get people to realize, obviously through music, but realize that we're kind of all in the same boat. And I hear a lot of people, well, you hear that about any style of music, but I hear a lot of people saying, I don't like jazz, or, jazz, well, it sucks. But it's like, well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about Dixieland? Are you talking about modern jazz? Are you talking about free jazz? Are you talking about, the spectrum is so large that, sometimes I feel like it's inadequate to describe it in that way. And I kind of translate it to life itself, in the sense that nobody would say, I don't like humans. I mean, because there are so many different personalities and so many different ways to live your life, but everybody's kind of related. Everybody's kind of working towards the same goal in a way. And whenever we realize that, that's when we become really, really strong as human beings and as a community. And it's the same thing with the music. I feel like if you're able to express your feelings through music, if you're able to tell a story, then you're bringing people together. You're not trying to break people away from each other. You're not trying to prove something or trying to prove this is good, this is bad. It's all good. We're all together in this, and that's kind of what I'm trying to go for as a person. I think I'm the kind of guy who, if I show up somewhere and I don't know anyone, I'll at least make 2 or 3 friends. I'll try to make sure that everybody has a good time. That's kind of what I'm trying to do with the music as well, and what is defining myself.
Beautiful. It's a great way to wrap everything up. Samuel, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. Thank you for the music, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Thanks for playing jazz all the time on the radio and online. We need more people like you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Montreal, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Samuel for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, Enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.